Most athletes are athletes because someone said they couldn't do it. Fundamentally, if my genes weren't athletic, I wouldn't be doing it. You're getting told every week, 80 kilos, mate. You've got to be 80 kilos. You know, you're a bit big, mate. You've got to be 80 kilos. The mistake is not learning from that mistake. He who learns fastest will prevail. Don't cry before a big race if I need to cry. My best results will come after that, to be honest. I mean, I felt no obligation to do things that people wanted me to do. For the people that knew me, knew I was manifesting that situation for 4 years. That was the day that I believed that maybe pro is possible.
What would it mean to you to become a professional cyclist? Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Extrospective Podcast. I'm joined today by Tom Portsmouth, and we're just going to kick straight off with asking Tom, how do we know each other and how come you're on the first episode? What do you think that is?
Josh Copley said, I think you should ride with Zach. You'll be a good ride, a good chat. We set off one afternoon/evening, had a nice sunset ride. You know, that's always a good way to kick off, isn't it? Under the sunset is a good way to form any friendship or relationship. So, it was a really good experience just to chat with you, like for even 1 hour, just to do that. And then after that, we just carried on riding together, having good conversations on the bike, and just kind of matched mindsets of what we wanted to do and how we believed about growing. With being in a house with you last year, that just kept getting stronger and stronger, that connection. And that's probably why I'm the first one on your podcast.
Yeah, I think that was quite clear early on, and obviously we'll delve into some of the specifics. We'll delve in later. But first of all, to kick things off, for those that don't know who you are just tuning in, who is Tom Portsmouth? How would you describe yourself?
My name is Tom Portsmouth. I'm not from Portsmouth. Fundamentally, I'm an athlete, and the sport I'm competing in at the moment is cycling. So at the moment, I'm a cyclist. But my character has always been an athlete before a cyclist. I found cycling because I was good at it, and I got praised very early on in those early sessions. And you know, just a little 100-meter race, you win that on the bike, and then you feel good and you feel good. But I've done loads of other sports before that. I did 7 years of gymnastics, 14 years of swimming, 12 years of rugby, a couple of years of football. So I've got a rounded background in sport. The whole family sporty. So that's fundamentally who I am as a person. If you take that out of my life, then it's quite empty.
So I know many people listening to this now will potentially be friends of yours or people who are at the University of Surrey with us and are mutual friends of both of us. But for those of you who don't know, Tom's obviously quite a successful cyclist. He's at that knife edge of trying to become a professional in the under-23 scene, travelling out to Belgium back and forth. And you heard a little bit there about, you know, he spent 14 years doing swimming, and I think was it 8 years in gymnastics?
7 years in gymnastics and 12 years in rugby. So,
right, okay. Yeah. So very all-rounded from a very young age. And so why do you think you fell into being a sports person or an athlete? I mean, of course, most of these things that define us emanate from a very early stage in our lives. And I mean, many people listening to this now who they might go to the gym a few times a week, or they might have tried a couch to 5K once, but never really understand someone that completely defines themselves and their whole life through the lens of performance sport. So why do you think, like, was it your parents that really encouraged you when you were like 2 years old, or like, did you just see something on TV? What was it that got you into gymnastics and domino effect?
It's all that nature versus nurture debate, isn't it? Fundamentally, if my genes weren't athletic, I wouldn't be doing it. When you try it for yourself, that you're good, and then you get inspired, and you know, kind of that positive reinforcement to go and do more because you're better. And I was walking from a very young age. I think my parents say quite regularly, like within the first year, maybe 8 months, I was on my feet. Double that time, so maybe 16 months or so, I was in a pool with armbands on, doing kicking and floating and swimming and stuff like that. So, from a young age, I was doing all of that. And
yeah, I mean, it's interesting to hear because you know, there are some children that, you know, try and start swimming and he all goes pear-shaped and their parents can't get them to go in the pool and they suddenly develop a fear of it and then they never touch a pool ever again.
I
And
mean,
there's
it was
just
strange because the first kind of 5 or 6 weeks of school and swimming, I would just stand in the shallow end and not swim.
really,
Yeah. I've been doing it all before, but as soon as I was at that school, I just couldn't do it for the first couple of weeks. But then parents took me down to Guildford Swimming Club, and started out there. So as soon as I wanted to finish a sport, okay, we finished that sport, boom, we spent that time doing that, we go on to the next one. But I'd need them in the room for maybe the first session, and then after that I could go and do it because I loved it. They didn't ever push me to go and do something I didn't want to do. It was always, you want to do this? Yeah, let's go.
I think that's very important, isn't it? You know, you've obviously gone, don't really fancy this anymore, but I still have that passion for sport, so I'm going to just try and find another channel to do it. And it's your parents being very quick to react to that and just be flexible. Because
I did three. I did three at once, so my weekend was busy.
Wow.
Like Saturday morning swimming pool, Saturday lunchtime gymnastics, Sunday morning rugby. If not swimming before the rugby as well. So it's a very busy time, and to some extent, I miss that kind of doing multiple sports in one day. I'm not going to triathlon, but I do miss those multiple sports in one day, even if it's doing a pool, like billiards and stuff like that. Even if you're doing snooker or the pool table, like that's something else to take your mind off the sport. It's another sport, and because I've done so much of that sport and so many variations of sport when I was younger, just doing one thing all the time is tough, but equally I can pull so many things from each of those sports into one sport to make me better at this sport of cycling.
I think that's what's particularly unique about yourself. Comparing that with other conversations you have with people, maybe they found mountain biking where they were 7, or they found just an interest for accounting when they were 11, and then they're tunnel visioned on one thing. But I think the way you've been obviously able to kind of assimilate information and lessons from each different sport growing up is kind of what's built you as a little bit more of an all-rounded athlete, both in terms of your build, but also in terms of your approach and the way you're able to analyze things and improve quite quickly. Out of all of those,
I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing. So I didn't know it in the moment until I came to cycling. It's like swimming was the hours in the pool. I knew once I'd finished that, I didn't want to go back to those sort of hours where someone else controlled the training time. Like I needed to control my own training time. Gymnastics, controlling your movement, knowing where you are in space. When you crash, you're not injured. All those things. And then rugby, you're seeing all the little gaps, you're seeing all the tactics, quick thinking, you're communicating with your guys quickly and effectively, like, this is what we're doing now, there's a gap there, boom, 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 done, try. And you can put all those together into one thing on the bike. So yeah.
Like, why is it, do you think, that you love sport? Like, what is it about it that gets you up in the morning and has made cycling now specifically, but just sport in general, your focal point? Is it like the goal setting? Is it something to work towards?
Having someone next to you to beat. Not just directly next to you, like right next to you. Swimming pool, the other lane, you're looking under the lane rope. Okay, he's there. I'm going to beat him. Rugby, you got the teams, you got the gaps. Okay, I'm going for that gap. I go, boom, get it. On the bike, I could never do time trials because I could never have the guy next to me. Unless it was like a 30-second gap in front of me to catch the guy, I could never do it.
So for you, it's far more about competition with others than it is competition with yourself, I suppose. You're an all-rounded athlete. You've taken all these lessons from all the other sports. Mm-hmm. How does that package specifically help or hinder you, or both, in your attempts to become a professional cyclist?
I suppose I've got residue from being a rugby player. As in, I can never lose my arms. I can never lose my broadness. I can never lose that kind of baseline weight and physical properties from those sports because they occur during my fundamental development years. Like you see people in a go-kart, they're going to always be small because they're always getting chucked around. They don't ever hold that weight. Or same with the bike, you never put on that fundamental weight or strength across the whole body. It's always just your legs from that young age. So say someone on 8 years old, same with go-kart and stuff like that. So yeah, that's probably one thing, but then for losing that weight advantage, I gained in other things. Yeah, I gain in the upper body strength for the sprinting, for being a bit more aggressive on the bike, being stable in the wind. All these things make me a type of rider that I am, in that kind of opportunistic, attacking sprinter, lead out, win echelon rider. So yeah, that's kind of one of the negatives and positives for what I'm doing.
Do you think, okay, this might be a bit of a challenging question, but it's obviously something that within the sport of cycling, and we've just alluded to it there, in terms of your physicality and the weight, how do you kind of mentally deal with the fact that that is a factor in a team taking you on board, even if you're getting the results? Because it must be hard, right?
Yeah. You're getting told every week, 80 kilos, mate. You've got to be 80 kilos. You've got to be 80 kilos. Right, you're a bit big, mate. You've got to be 80 kilos. But now I'm 80 kilos. There's the element of you're proving them wrong to be right. You're not proving them wrong because you proved them right, but you proved them wrong that they didn't believe you'd get there. It's cycling. You've got to accept it, and it's just shown myself that I wanted by losing the excess kilos that I have done at the right time, because I'm still 20. I'm still young, but I've lost it at the good moment, and I've got absolute solid power as a result of it. If I did this a year ago, maybe I wouldn't have the power I do right now. A fine balance, and everything's kind of happened when it needs to happen, and yeah, I'm down at 80 kilos with some good power now, so I can be confident, and with age, I've got more to lose as well. So weight's always easier to lose than gain power. So as long as I gain the power that I need to, I can leave the weight when it needs to come off and when I'm obliged to take it off.
And that's an interesting kind of comment then, because it kind of speaks to that disciplined mindset that an athlete must have with regards to sticking to your training schedule and also sticking to a healthy, balanced diet, especially in a world where we're presented with an abundance of comfort. I mean, it's pouring down with rain outside today. There are lots of people who'd sack a ride off, but there's lots of people potentially like yourself who would go, actually, it's not too bad, it's safe, I've got a session to do, let's crack on. And those consistent choices obviously gain the power. But it's equally challenging to make the consistent choices with the diet, because there's always the takeaway that your housemates are ordering. There's always going out for beers on a Friday night. And you have that fear of missing out, especially as an athlete where you're trying to consistently build over the long run. Those little habits all add up. So
I'm quite lucky that I don't like a lot of takeaways. So I'm quite lucky in that respect. But
I suppose the question specifically is like the eating side of things. Like you say you find that easier. I can lose the weight when I need to, but gaining the power is the hardest thing. But purely from a mental perspective, because
mentally it's probably harder, but in a physical way.
Oh, sure, okay.
It's easier to lose weight than gain power. Like to gain the same watts per kilo. So if you were to gain like watt per kilo, you need to gain 50 watts. But to gain 1 watt per kilo, you lose like 2 kilos.
Yeah.
Which one's easier?
It all 50 watts up, doesn't it?
50 watts is 2 years. 2 kilos is 1 month.
Yeah. So it's physically easier to lose the weight in terms of literally going, okay, I'm going to eat a 300 calorie deficit for 3 months, and then bang, like biology does its work. But that's not easy, is it?
There's more science to that.
That's not easy.
What I've done with my nutritionist this year is build habits. Tracking didn't work, so we built habits. I believe those habits will stay now because we've done it in the right way and we've done it slowly.
You say in the right way and doing it slowly. Do you think there's that danger you've got a little window into professional sport and cycling, and I'm obviously cautious of touching any kind of topics regarding like eating disorders. But how do you think that was potentially a risk for you, and do you see that as a problem in people your age who are trying to go up a hill faster? Therefore, it's literally a case of gravity and being lighter.
In some cases, it will be. Yeah, I don't know how much I'll touch on that topic, but for me and my mindset, I know, yes, it's hard, but I wanted it. And this whole year has been, it's hard, but I know in my gut that I want it. I want to build that routine. It's hard for the first 4 weeks, but I want to build that routine. I want to lose the weight. Yes, it's hard for the first 4 weeks, but okay. Now I don't even know how I've lost the weight because it's been so good, powerful. You know, just those final couple of kilos, I don't know how they've come off, but they've come off and I've still got power. And because those habits and those things that have made me want to drive on, even though it was hard in that moment, I stuck with it throughout. So
it's quite clear from what you're saying how you're able to actually set this long-term thing against it and go, you know what, I've got something that's worth it. You know, I've got something that kind of supersedes my day in, day out desires to eat a little bit more food, stay up late on your phone, not get enough sleep, etc.
Well, it's the process, and if you enjoy the process, it'll happen. It's not the end goal. Like, the process has been making my life better and happier, and that's what we've done.
I'm gonna kind of backtrack a little bit. What are you most proud of so far in your life, but then specifically with cycling?
Gilligan Pro-Commerce course. Sorry, Gilligan Pro-Commerce course, because that was the day that I was like, yeah, I'm pro. I'm going to be pro. You might have to cut that out, but yeah, Gilligan Pro-Commerce course, because that was the day that I believed that maybe pro is possible. You had ex-Tour de France stage winners, yellow jersey wearers, monument winners, Tour of Flanders winners, just, you know, all these riders, and I was right with them for the whole race. The whole race, I was right there when others might not have been. To some degree, I know it's a Pro-Commerce course, so there's a little bit of fun going on, but equally, I know this one is very, very big in Belgium. Like, it's the only non-professional UCI race that got coverage to a UCI race standard. So for me to have competed with those pros and to that level of pro for the extent of time that I did woke me up to the fact that I was capable of potentially making it as pro.
Was that when, for those of you who aren't aware, was that when you bridged across to Mr. Evenepoel? Is that the race?
That was when I bridged across to Mr. Remco Evenepoel. Yeah,
And,
because I lost his wheel in 2018, and for the people that knew me, knew I was manifesting that situation for 4 years. I was like, yeah, I was a wheel from being on Remco's wheel for that race, but I let him go. Damn, could have done that. And then to show that I did it 4 years later. Yeah, some people would have thought I was crazy and talking absolute bollocks, but
I mean, you look at the front of the pro races now, and no one follows. Like, didn't he win Flanders this year? Oh no, was it Liège? Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
Liège, yeah.
Well, from a solo.
I mean,
attack.
I'm not saying I can follow him uphill. Like,
Sure.
I'm not doing 7 watts per kilo for 20 minutes. Like, I'm not that sort of rider. But when it was that flat race, I knew I could do it.
You got the big engine.
Yeah. Got the big enough engine to do it, because I know I'm doing the same watts as him on the flat, at least.
Probably more, but he's just disappears into the shadow.
Freaking aero.
Yeah.
Yeah. He goes sub tarmac.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that race is in Belgium. We haven't covered it so far on the podcast, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about what it's like, especially didn't you start when you were around 15, going out to Belgium? 15, 16?
14.
14, okay.
14.
So as a 14-year-old, most 14-year-old, well, if you can think back to when you were 14 today.
14 months. I was 14 years and 3 months old when I first went out to Belgium.
Yeah, that's not normal. That's most kids are coming home at the weekend and going on FIFA or going and playing football down at the park or whatever else, and you're there with your parents traveling
No,
out to Belgium
it
every
was
weekend.
it was with a coach called Dave Williams and two other riders. So we all went out in the back of a BMW M3, very small car, uh, all the bags up to our knees and chests, just absolutely cramped in there. And yeah, did two races out there on about March 20th, 2016.
When you're going during school and sick form, heading out there every weekend, how did you manage to kind of balance that with school and exams and seeing your mates in the week and not just get completely burnt out and kind of quit and give up? Like what was it that kept the fire going for that? Because I don't think I could have done that myself.
My coach, 2018, it was all my coach. He was the one that kept me afloat through the GCSEs, because that was the year that I transitioned into junior and I had GCSEs planning for the first 6 months of that junior career. So
Junior is when you're 16 and 17, isn't it? As a
16, 17, 18, so under 19 years old, yeah. So yeah, my coach kept me afloat there, given that junior step up is probably one of the biggest step ups you'll ever do, from that youth to junior. And it
in
probably
terms of
even get
how competitive it is.
gears, speed, competition, distance, just all of that. Yeah, the age gap between 16 and 18 is probably the biggest age gap in terms of physical and mental maturity. That was the biggest jump. And to add on top of that, because I was the young end of the age group, I was doing my GCSEs for the first 6 months of that transition. That was probably the hardest period that I've ever been through at this point. And yeah, the coach was like, just trust the plan. You don't think about training, just go and do it. And yeah, we got good exam results. And by the end of the season, I'd won like 3 Commerce races and done a couple of UCIs as well. There were a few days that I'd burnt out. On the Monday, I was absolutely fatigued and had to, chill in bed for the day or whatnot. But that was more a rarity than it wasn't. So yeah, maybe twice or 3 times in 1 year that would happen, probably towards the end of the term as well.
Is that more physical or mental burnout?
Mental. It's always mental. You can do so much with adrenaline and stuff like that, but if you don't chill out, mentally speaking, for every now and again, it can get on top of you. But yeah,
I think in a way, I certainly learned that this year at uni, trying to balance a million things and then just,
because physically you could keep on going. Physically, you could keep on going, but once you got mentally into strenuous situations, like with exams coming up, you had to back off with other things, just because mentally you couldn't keep on top of everything. But physically, you could go and do it for as long as you wanted. But
everyone says that's a limiting factor, don't they? Learning for you, as you gradually did, to tap into that more and more. You're never going to find the limit of your body, but you're gonna get closer. You're going to realize, actually, mentally, I can do this 4-day stage race and then immediately come back, do some school, go back out there. And I suppose it's
what I've used this year. Because I've got that experience before. If I hadn't had that experience before, this year would have been much harder.
Right. It gives you the confidence that it's possible.
Yeah, because I wrote an article last December. I'm excited to go back to this way. Yes, it's expensive in some ways, but I've done it before. We've done it before. I've won races by doing it before. It keeps the focus up. It splits a life in 2, so you can take a time off and time on. So yeah,
it's pretty full on, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, I've been going since February. There's been days of a bit of fatigue and tiredness, but nothing really to the extent I had before. I've hit every race that I set out to do, near enough.
Yeah, and I've certainly noticed as well, because we finally got around to it, but I've obviously I've lived with Tom for the past year, not anymore, but for second year of uni for me and for first year for Tom. And it was very interesting seeing you you almost forget. It's like I'd have a normal weekend, work on a Saturday, ride my bike on a Sunday, go to church. Monday morning I'm there and I see you sat with your bowl of cereal, and you almost forget that you've travelled across Europe and raced against kind of top level Belgian athletes and then just come back. You sat there with your breakfast, you kind of catch up half an hour and then bang, 9 a.m. lecture. And it's like, to be able to achieve all that's been really interesting to see. And that's what really interests me about the psyche of it, you know, how are you just so relentlessly going out there? But I suppose, yeah, it's the dream, isn't it?
It's who and what I am, and when that's aligned, then it's easy. Mindset perspective, someone might think of it as sacrificing too much, and they don't want to miss out on their friends at home, or there's those little social cues sometimes might weigh a bit heavier in someone else's mind than what it's in my mind. Like, obviously I value all my friends, but you know, those parties or social situations, I've had a good balance with my friends for them to understand, and for me to keep a good enough connection with them that when I do come back, then it's a meaningful period of time that I'm with them.
And I was going to say that kind of nicely brings us toward how you found it, not living with me in particular, but just living in the house, kind of after the lockdowns and being socially isolated, and only having sport kind of in the 2021 season with still the January lockdowns and things. How have you found coming back into, I think we said before, it's like coming back into civilization, coming back into social circles, when obviously because of your dream and your passion, you don't want to.
Got to protect you got to protect them lungs, don't you?
Yeah, you got to, exactly. And I think, yeah, like tell me about that. How that was for you.
I mean, I felt no obligation to do things that people wanted me to do. So whenever anyone was urging me to go out for a night out or with drinks, I didn't feel like I needed to do it, because I was happy doing my own thing, and I didn't owe it to that person to need to go out, because I knew my path, and I knew that I was getting what I needed out of it. They don't bring the same to me as doing sport or sitting down and chatting with close mates. So it was hard being with the whole big crowd around the campus for the first 5 months of that. But once I got COVID, that was easy. I was fine with it.
What do you think you've learned the most being in first year uni? Like from October to June, where you live with me, Sam and Chris. And how has that shaped you almost as an athlete, but just make you all rounded?
The confidence that you guys at the house are giving me in the person that I am is a good person, because like I said before, when you don't have those people to bounce off, it's hard to know who you are when it's just your parents telling you all the good stuff. Whereas if you're bouncing off learning your values and stuff, because now I've gone home to my mum and I've been a bit more forward about what my values are, because I'm at the age of 20 that I'm starting to form my own values. And I think for her, if she listens to this, which I'm sure she will, but yeah, that's quite cool for her, I think. So yeah, you guys have helped confidence build, and I think that'll develop next year and beyond now. So I've got good structure and good belief. Over the last year, since starting the Belgian races in under 23, I've started becoming the mature self that I should be.
In any given scenario, what does a mature Tom do differently from a 17 or 18-year-old Tom who hasn't learned the lessons of the last year?
Still emotional. I've always got to be that. Still cry before a big race if I need to cry. My best results will come after that, to be honest. So that's not changed. I suppose just being emotionally aware. Last year I had no emotional awareness, really. It was hard to understand. But now you've got control of awareness, and awareness of who you are and what certain things do to affect you, and the mindset, and being super rapid to understand that, within a day or two, really process it quicker and with less energy, and kind of be able to put a block up for things that aren't necessary to think about at a certain
Do you mean in
point
terms of reflecting after races, either like a good or a bad result, or kind of dealing with the stress of your uni exams? I know this year was kind of a challenge to prepare for all of that right in the middle of race season.
Yeah. So now I can go into next year and have a full, complete plan, knowing the experiences that I had last year. Experience is everything. If you have experience, it's easy. But that's the challenge of it, getting over that first experience hump, and then the second time you come around to experience that is perfect. If you make a mistake once, you don't need to be punished for that. You made a mistake, fine. The mistake is not learning from that mistake, and that's when you should kind of have a moment to be a bit harder on yourself. First mistake, you just need to realize it's a mistake. Fine, do it. Don't do it again. Keep it in that folder.
It's all about being, as you said, emotionally mature. You know, like if I do something and like I miss a training session and I feel really bad about it, it's like, well, obviously I'm going to give myself the grace to like forgive myself for missing the training session. But equally, I've missed a training session. I can't consistently do that. I need to tell myself, no, Zach, like, come on, do better because you're better.
But if you do it a second time, you give yourself, a bit more of a lesson and a teaching.
It's a strange thing being a human. There are so many things that you want to do that you can't do. There's so many things that you do that you don't want to do. It's just like getting control of that is obviously the most powerful thing, and you can only do it.
But the skill
with experience.
The skill is learning controlling when not to be nice to yourself. Like, you've got to be nice to yourself, but control when you do need to be a bit harsh on yourself. But most people go into a toxic spiral. No, I can't do this. Can't do this. Yeah.
But if you can be a bit more rational about it and actually go, here's a practical solution to make sure I don't do this thing again.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the power. I mean, what's your phrase?
Exactly. Yeah. So punishment is kind of sitting down and physically writing out a plan to not do it again. Whereas the first time you can kind of make a mental log of it and not have to write it down.
You're perfectly describing your number one phrase.
He who freaking learns.
It's a good one.
He who learns. And you smack whatever you want on the end of it. For me, it's he who learns fastest will prevail, which is generally for most people. But, you could tailor it for what you want to do, for a specific job opportunity, for education, for the results that you want to do. You have like 50 race situations, right? Bunch sprints, breakaways, sprints from breakaways, solo breakaways, wind riding, bunch sprints, climbs, descents, all of that. Learn a mistake in one of those and then never do it again.
Eventually, every time you make the move, it's the right move. The timing of the sprint, the wheel to follow.
Exactly.
And I suppose that's been demonstrated with your more recent results.
And that's just what expertise is. Just takes time.
And I suppose that's particularly relevant as an under 23 cyclist, the he who learns mantra with the whole ticking time. So when you become a pro, at some point, excuse the phrase, but you get put on a shelf. It's like if you're 26 and you're still at the same level as you are now, getting the same results, no team's interested. So it's kind of the pressure cooker of professional sport. It's absolutely brutal. Alongside the things we've talked about already in this podcast in terms of the weight and the putting off the partying and all that kind of stuff, it's also like it could also be.
But if you're enjoying it, like I said, then you're not really thinking about it at the moment. If you're enjoying what you're doing, you're enjoying the process, you're not really thinking about any of those. You just want to be the best.
What would it mean to you to become a professional cyclist?
It's just another tick box, isn't it, really? It's what I want to do after that. Be that in winning monuments or helping riders win the best monuments or whatever, how that future goes. But that's just the first step. It doesn't finish at getting pros, but it would mean a lot because you've put work in, but it wouldn't finish there.
What is your end goal? If it's just another ticking box, like you say, it's a means, but to what end?
Got an answer in my head, but fundamentally, it's death, isn't it? Don't have any regrets there, is it?
But that can't be your goal.
I mean, we're all getting there, aren't we? No. I just love learning. Why is there an end to learning?
I mean, there isn't. Yeah, I suppose, but it can't just be that a professional cycling career is just to learn more, just to get to the next thing. Like there must be one thing that you can go, you know what, I would be proud if I got to this.
Of course, I want to win, like monuments. Tour of Flanders is Milan San Remo. Those two are kind of big ones for me.
And what? But why? Why do you want to win it?
I think one of the fundamental things for most athletes is proving people wrong. Most athletes are athletes because someone said they couldn't do it. And yeah.
And so ever since you've been cycling, people have been telling you, he won't be a good cyclist. He's got into the sport too late.
Yeah, just, I don't know really.
So when you're still on the top step,
that's a hard question, but yeah, what the proverbial middle finger to all those people?
Do you think that's a good motivation?
I don't know. We'll find out.
So, just the thing I'm thinking here.
It's not the sole motivation, man. It was. It was when I was younger. Right. Now with the maturity, it's just personal development. If you can be a happy person, then that's just a goal, isn't it?
So that's the beyond the sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's beyond the sport. If you've got a happy life, you're going to be a good sports person. It is everything in some cases, but if you've not got the balance behind it, it's not going to work. And I want to do sport long lasting. So in order to do that, I want to develop myself to be a person that enjoys learning and the experience in the process.
Because you said it's beyond the sport, and potentially it's no guarantee that you'll be a professional athlete. You know, you're going to give it all you got. But what else would you go into? What else would you see yourself doing? And why would you see that as? Why does that speak to you specifically, other than sport?
I would love to help the next riders how the coaches help me.
Because you can see the value in it.
Imparting my knowledge. So I need to be careful not to share a lot of the knowledge that I'm acquiring right now.
Yeah.
That's the reason why I'm not doing a specific cycling podcast or stuff like that, because I don't need to share that knowledge now. Because if I do it now, then I can't do what I want to do later. I can send snippets like the Hugh Learn stuff, fine, but the specifics on how I'm doing what I'm doing, that's staying in my noggin. No, I believe I've got some good information, just thanks to the parents I've got, how I learn as a human being, how my genetics help me learn, because we all learn in different ways, but yeah, I've got my way of doing it. It's going well so far. It's just tapping into that, isn't it?
To kind of wrap up, is there any questions that you have for me regarding the topics?
Why are you wearing a suit and tie?
Well, that's a whole blog post in itself. Okay, I'm wearing a suit and tie because I believe that how you present yourself can really affect how you kind of conduct your body language, your mindset to what you're doing. And so I decided to put on a suit on for this because, to me, I need to see it as work. Okay, so I've bought a couple of suits to go to Wales for work, and there's no dress code to have to wear a suit. But when I'm in the office, I want to be focused and driven and in a work mindset. And I don't think it's as possible wearing a tracksuit and joggers. Simple answer, really.
I mean, I kid, but I love suits. If I could wear a suit every day, I would.
I intend to.
Yes. Maybe I'll design a cycling kit for my future team as a suit.
That would be horrendous.
I mean, people have put lingerie on them before, so I don't think it'll be that bad.
My favourite experience of seeing a cycling kit was like the baked beans. You can get it on like AliExpress. Just a massive baked bean tin on the jersey.
Heinz.
I've always wanted that.
Heinz Marmite.
Yeah, right. I think that wraps everything up. unless there's anything else extra that you'd like to send to everyone as a takeaway message from who you are and your experiences. But as we said,
We've
the
got
lips
it all down.
the lips are sealed.
We've got it all down.
Perfect. Well, in that case, thank you very much for coming onto the podcast, Tom. I hope it's been a rich first episode. We're learning as we're going. I'll be better at asking and answering questions, hopefully, as we move forward. But thanks for being so willing to be the guinea pig, Tom.